Welcome to Cepher Commentaries. Today, we're going to comment on Genesis, Bere'shiyth, chapters 24 and 25. And Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and Yahweh had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all he had, "Put, I pray, your hand under my thigh." Now, this is an interesting phrase. In the Hebrew, this is simana yidke takt yarkir, literally meaning to put your hand under my thigh. At least that's how it's best translated, I suppose. But when we look at this word yakir or yarek, we see this word. I'm just going to read what Strong says about it, and you can make your own decisions. This is from an unused root meaning to be soft. The thigh, from its fleshy softness, by euphemistically the generative parts, figuratively a shank, flank, side. For example, body, loins, shaft, side, or thigh. Now, some commentators construe this as essentially swearing by the circumcision. And this may be an implication that this was how it was being done. But nonetheless, let's continue on. And I will make you swear 7 oaths. I will make you swear 7 oaths by Yahweh, the Elohim of heaven and the Elohim of the earth, that you shall not take a woman to my son of the daughters of the Canaanim, among whom I dwell. Okay, now again, this word is an extremely important word, and it goes to really the whole sevenfold doctrine of the creation, and really the sevenfold aspect of the character of Yahweh. Because we see here this word is Shabbah. And it's a primitive root, properly to be complete. To be complete. This is why people say that the number 7 is the number of completeness, but used only as a denominative from the word Shabbah, which is the primitive cardinal number 7, also 7 times. By implication, a week. By extension, an indefinite number. Yeah, by implication, a week. That's by a modern implication, a week. It means the 7th. And so Shabbah, in its plural form, Shabbaot, or Shabbat, yes, Shabbat is the plural form of 7s, Shabbat. And so here we see that this is to swear 7 oaths, all right, to 7 oneself, i.e. to swear as if by repeating a declaration 7 times, to adjure, charge by oath with an oath, feed to the full, take an oath, or cause to make, swear. So this is why the Cepher uses the phrase, wherever this term Shabbah is found, to swear 7 oaths by Yahweh, the Elohim of heaven and the Elohim of earth, that you shall not take a woman to my son of the daughters of the Canaanim, among whom I dwell. So we might reckon that this is particularly critically important to Abraham. Now we see that Yitzhak would pay close attention to this, because remember that Abraham is speaking to his eldest servant. And he's saying, and he's going to go on to say in verse 4, but you shall go to my country and to my kindred and take a woman to my son Yitzhak. And the servant said to him, perchance the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Do I need to bring your son again to the land from where you came? And Abraham said to him, beware that you do not bring my son there again. Interesting. I want you to go get someone from my tribe, but do not bring my son there. These are extremely important things when you look at this, at the scheme of this, and how Abraham is dealing with this. Because we're going to see that Yitzhak is, in fact, going to take a wife from this tribe. And Yitzchak would then give birth to two children. Two nations is how it's going to read. And one of those, the very first thing he's going to do is marry two of the Kenyanim women and Ishmaelim. Yes, he didn't seem to think that Abraham's 7th oath issue up here in chapter 24 was particularly relevant to him. Verse 7, Yahweh Elai of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spoke to me, that swore 7 oaths to me, saying, to your seed will I give this land, and he shall send his messenger before you, and you shall take a woman to my son from there. And if the woman will not be willing to follow you, then you shall be cleared from my oath. Only do not bring my son there again. And the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his Adonai, and swore 7 oaths to him concerning that matter. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his Adonai and departed, for all the goods of his Adonai were in his hand. So at this point, you can look at this from kind of a position in the modern world. All the goods of Abraham were in his hand. He had the delegated authority of Abraham to dispose of the entirety of Abraham's estate. You might call it a power of attorney. And he arose and he went to Aram Naharaim. Aram Naharaim. So we can see that Abraham's family came out of Aram. Now, for those of you that recall, again, a critical part of understanding any of the tribal relationships is to know the children of the sons of Noah. And I'm just going to take a second to go back and review that real quick. Let's drop back into chapter 10, because this is going to become very important. Okay, so in chapter 10, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, the Toldat, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. And to them were born sons after the flood. So we'll start with the youngest, Yafet. And Yafet had the sons Gimer, sometimes called Gomer, Magog, it's often said in the Christian church, and Madai, and Yavan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Theres. And the sons of Gimer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarma. Okay. And the sons of Yavan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. So this is going to give you an idea when we talk about these names here. These are the progenitors of massive tribes that are going to dominate history. And in particular, they're going to dominate the region of the north. By these were the isles of the other nations divided in their lands, and everyone after his tongue and after their families and after their nations. And the sons of Ham, not Ham, but Ham, Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seva, and Havilah, and Kafta, and Ra'amah, and Savteka. And the sons of Ra'amah, Sheva, and Dedan. Now you might recall the queen of Sheba, right? The queen of Sheba. And Cush fathered Nimrod, and he began to be a warrior and a hunter in the earth. Okay. Now, and Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Chet, and the Yebusi, and the Emori, and the Girgashi. Now, Chet would become the leader of what would be called the Hetites, or the Hetites. And there's kind of two distinguishing groups of the Hetites. We have to talk about the ancient Hetites, and then the more modern Hetites. And the Hivi and the Arki and the Sini and the Arvadi and the Tzemari and the Hamathi, these were the family of the Canaanim spread abroad. Okay, now, and to Shem, also the father of all the children of Abru. So the children of Shem are going to be called Hebrews. Okay, the children of Shem would be called Hebrews. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Abru, the brother of Yafet, the elder, even to him were children born. And the children of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Araphaxad, Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Araphaxad fathered Shilach, and Shilach fathered Ebru. Okay, and so this is the lineage that is important to recognize when we start talking about going into the land of Aram Naharaim. We're talking about the land of one of the tribes of Shem, which you could also refer to as a Shemitic tribe. Not Semitic. Semitic is a mispronunciation in my view. If you're calling him Shem, then if he's of Shem, it should be Shemitic. To the city of Nahor. Now, you might recall Nahor was two people in this lineage. Nahor was Abraham's brother, who had 12 sons before Abraham had even Ishmael. And so Nahor was very definitely a progenitor of 12 tribes, and those 12 tribes are going to proliferate throughout the land of Aram. Now, this land of Aram was most likely in the northern Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. We're not certain of that, but that appears to be the case, and that these tribes would dwell all the way up to the Black Sea and to the Caspian Sea and into the mountains of Ararat, and also bordering into Turkey. Now, in Turkey, we'd also see the presence of some of the tribes of Yafet. And on the other side of the Black Sea, we would also see the tribes of Yafet. Okay. And he made his camels to kneel outside the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, at the time that the women go out to draw water. And he said, now here we're going to see this servant. We're going to see the servant of Abraham is now going to essentially what they used to call put out a fleece. He's going to ask Yahweh to give him a very definite sign as to which woman he should pick for the son of his Adonai. So he prays this way. He says, O Yahweh Elai Adonai of Abraham, I pray, send me good speed this day and show kindness to my Adonai Abraham. Behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. And let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, let down your pitcher, I pray, that I may drink. And she shall say, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. Let the same be she that you have appointed for your servant Yitzchak, and thereby shall I know that you have showed kindness to my Adonai. Okay, now, in this passage that we're going to see here, in the courting of Rivka, the courting of Rivka is one of the most classic examples, and possibly the best example of how a true marital relationship should be done. If you're looking for a biblical model and as to how a true relationship should begin, it begins with the man having a representative, and the representative then is going to approach the family, and the representative is going to discuss the virtues of the person that he's representing to the family, such that the family recognizes that this person who is courting the woman has the capability to replace the cover that the woman has from her father. And so this is the kind of thing that you're looking to, and that this is the kind of thing that will be established, and it's the kind of thing that is to be evaluated. And it's very important to develop this relationship first. And it happened that before he had done speaking, that behold, Rivka came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the woman of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray, drink a little water from your pitcher. And she said, drink, my Adonai. And she hastened and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have done drinking. And she hastened and emptied her pitcher into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water and drew for all his camels. And the man, wondering at her, held his peace, to wit whether Yahweh had made his journey prosperous or not. And it happened that as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of a half shekel of weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels of weight of gold. And he said, "Whose daughter are you? Tell me, I pray, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge?" And she said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bore to Nachor." She said, moreover, to him, "We have both straw and provender enough and room to lodge." And the man bowed down his head and worshipped Yahweh. And he said, "Blessed be Yahweh Elohai Adonai of Abraham, who has not left destitute my Adonai of his mercy and his truth. I, being in the way, Yahweh led me to the house of my Adonai's brethren." And the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. And Rivkah had a brother, and his name was Lavan. Now, an important feature, because we're going to be introduced to Lavan. And Lavan, as you know, is going to play an extremely important part in the life of Yaakov. And here we can see, you can just imagine, you come in, you're trying to court, you trying to court my sister, I'll take that guy out and pound him, the approach of the brother, right? He's going to protect his sister. Sometimes brothers are so protective that the sister can't ever get married. But Lavan, this comes from the same word as Lavan, and this means from H33835, it means white. A primitive root also is diminutive from 3843, to be or to become white. It also means to make bricks or to be made white. Interesting. Now, when it talks about being made white, that's a very interesting feature, because it's very possible that the natural color of man was actually red, because we see that man was called Adam. And of course, Aleph Dalet Mem is the same way you spell Adom, which means red. And so man's skin tone was probably a natural kind of red color. And that what we see is that we see over the years, depending on where the tribes are located in the climate of the earth, that one tribe is made white, one tribe retains its redness, one tribe becomes more brown, one tribe becomes even darker, that we would call black today. And, so these kinds of different colorations in skin tone are taking place from a number of factors, a lot of which it has to do with the climate. Okay. And Lavan ran out to the man to the well. And it happened that when he saw the earrings and bracelet, or the earring and bracelets upon his sister's hand. Now, let's take a look at that word there very quickly, too, when we're talking about earring, because this is a big discussion point and among the community, right? So this is the word netzem. And this word means actually a nose ring. It's construed as an earring or a jewel, but in its initial meaning, it's a nose ring. So this particular discussion goes around the community as to whether or not a nose ring is an appropriate piercing. And in this case, so when you see, quite often, you'll see women that'll have a very discreet nose ring, and it won't be a nose ring, rather, it will be a nose piercing, like a little diamond on one side of the nose. I know every time I go to get a cup of coffee anymore, I find what do they call them? A barista. I find a barista, and at least half of them have a nose ring, only it's half a ring. So it's a half a ring, not completely enclosed, but it's definitely a piercing in the center of the nose that has this half a ring. Now, here we're talking about a nose ring that was half a shekel of gold. So this is quite an interesting feature. So were the women in those days wearing these rings, these nose rings, that were of such a size that, you could hook an oxen yoke to the ring and carry the woman around behind you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that this was pretty significant. All right. And it happened that when he saw the earring or nose ring and bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when you think about bracelets, remember that even though these are golden, the bracelet is really kind of a cufflink. So when we see this, we can see in the Torah, you have a couple of things going on. That when a person becomes a bondservant, the person becomes a bondservant under the rules of the Torah. They're a bondservant for 7 years, and then in the 7th year, they're released from that servitude. And the rule says that if the bondservant comes into the relationship married and he has children, well, his wife and his children come with him out of the servitude. But if he comes in unmarried and his employer or his bondholder provides a wife for him, the wife and the children belong to the bondholder and not to the bonded servant. So the proposition is then, okay, here's your 7th year, you're free to go. If you don't want to go, however, you're welcome to stay as a bondservant for life. But the ear was to be pierced with an awl. And you could imagine that after 7 years, you'd pierce the other ear. So the ear piercings, 2 ears being pierced, represents and means a bondservant and a voluntary agreed upon bondservant for life. So the statement that's being made from a biblical point of view, when a mother decides to have her daughter's ears pierced, or the daughter says, I want to have my ears pierced, what they're saying is they're advertising to the community that as a young maiden, when they are going to get married, they're going to be a bondservant for life to that marriage. Now, you take 2 golden bracelets and you put a bracelet on either side, may be attractive, may look good, and so on and so forth. But a bracelet is essentially a handcuff without the chain. So it is another marker that the woman is, in fact, a servant of this person. And then, of course, once you put a nose ring in, a golden nose ring, well, you're a person who has already agreed by the piercings in your ear that you're going to be a bondservant for life. Now you have handcuffs on either hand, and you have a nose ring where they can just run a rope through it and haul you around by the nose, right? So these are the kinds of meanings that are inferred in this kind of jewelry. Okay. And so it happened that when he saw the earrings and bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rivkah, his sister, saying, Thus spoke the man to me, that he came to the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the well, and he said, Come in, you who are blessed of Yahweh. Wherefore do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and room for the camels. And the man came into the house, and he ungirded his camels and gave straw and provender for the camels and water to wash his feet. Now, this is an interesting situation. Would you bring a camel into your house, right? And of course, the house is an interesting term here because this comes from the very famous term, bayit. And this, it can be construed as a house, a court, a door, a dungeon. It could be a tent. It could be a home. It could be a winter house. It could be a palace. It could be a prison. It could be all of these things, right? This bayit. And so, for instance, when we look at the name of the place, Beit Lechem, the house of bread, Beit Lechem. Well, when you're talking about he came into the house, the Beit, you think of this this house may have been much more like maybe like a Spanish house where you have a large patio in the middle, and there were surrounds. And it's very possible that the living provisions inside of this were actually in tents. And so this was a tent area that was completely enclosed where the camels could come in. Okay, verse 33, and there was set meat before him to eat. And he said, I will not eat until I have told my errand. And he said, well, speak on. He said, I am Abraham's servant, and Yahweh has blessed my Adonai greatly, and he has become great, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and men servants and maid servants and camels and asses. Okay, so the first representation that the servant is making to Laban is, look, we've got flocks, herds, silver, gold, manservants, maidservants, camels, and asses. Okay, there's plenty of wealth going on here. And Sarah, my Adonai's woman, bore a son to my Adonai when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. So all of this stuff that he's just described is going to be in the hands of the son. And my Adonai made me swear 7 oaths, saying, you shall not take a woman to my son of the daughters of the Canaanite in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house and to my kindred and take a woman to my son. And I said to my El Adonai, perchance the woman will not follow me. And he said to me, Yahweh, before whom I walk, will send his messenger with you and prosper your way, and you shall take a woman for my son of my kindred and of my father's house. Then shall you be cleared from this my oath when you come to my kindred, and if they give not you one, you shall be cleared from my oath. And it came this day to the well. I came this day to the well and said, oh, Yahweh Elohai Adonai of Abraham, if you do prosper my way, which I go, behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin comes forth to draw the water, and I say to her, give me, I pray, a little water of your pitcher to drink. And she says to me, both of you drink, and I will also draw for your camels. Let the same be the woman whom Yahweh has appointed for my Adonai's son. And before I had done speaking in my heart, behold, Rivkah came forth with her pitcher on her shoulder, and she went down to the well and drew water. And I said to her, let me drink, I pray. And she made haste, and she let down her pitcher from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she made the camels drink. And I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nachor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And I put the earring upon her face and the bracelets upon her hands. And I bowed down my head and worshiped Yahweh. So he's made the selection in accordance with the sign he asked from Yahweh. And then he essentially put a ring in her nose and bracelets on her hands, although they were very, very valuable bracelets. And I bowed down my head and worshiped Yahweh, blessed Yahweh Elai, Adonai of Abraham, which had led me in the right way to take my Adonai's brother's daughter's son. And now if you will deal kindly and truly with my Adonai, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Lavan and Bethuel answered and said, the thing proceeds from Yahweh. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rivkah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your Adonai's son's woman, as Yahweh has spoken. And it happened that when Abraham's servants heard these words, he worshipped Yahweh, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth silver, jewels, gold, jewels, and raiment, and gave them to Rivkah. Okay, now this is again establishing a dowry for the wife. This is, again, a part of this engagement ceremony. So the servant has achieved permission from both the father and the brother, and now he bestows a very large dowry on Rivkah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. And they did eat and drink, and he and the men that were with him, and tarried all night. And they rose up in the morning and said, send me away to my Adonai. And her brother and her mother said, let the damsel abide with us a few days, at least 10, and after that she shall go. And he said to them, hinder me not, seeing Yahweh has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my Adonai. And they said, we will call the damsel, and inquire at her mouth. We will also get permission from the woman at this point. Everyone else has agreed. What does Rivkah think? And they called Rivkah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rivkah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rivkah and said to her, you are our sister. Be the mother of thousands of millions, and let your seed possess the gate of those which hate them. And Rivkah arose, and her damsels, and they rode upon the camels and followed the man. And the servant took Rivkah and went his way. And Yitzchak came from the way of the well of Bere'shiyth lachai roi, for he dwelt in the country of the south. And Yitzchak went out to meditate in the field in the evening and lifted his eyes, and he saw, and behold, the camels were coming. All right, now before we continue, let's look at this well, Be'er Lachai Roi, because this has historic meaning. Remember that Abraham was known for being a well digger, and even the Pelishtim would fill in his wells and then argue, right? Fill in his wells and then argue with him. That was our well. I can't imagine filling in a well. Okay. So Ber Lachai Roi, this is a well of a living one, my seer, Lachai Roi, a place in the desert. Okay, so the living Lachai, Lachaim, Lachai, Lachaim, and Roi, of course, this idea of Roi comes from the word roeh, which means a seer, or even a vision. Okay, all right. And Yitzchak went out into the field to meditate in the field, and he lifted his eyes and saw, behold, the camels were coming. And Rivkah lifted her eyes, and when she saw Yitzchak, she lit off the camel, for she had said to the servant, what man is this that walks in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my Adonai. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yitzchak at all these things that he had done. And Yitzchak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rivkah, and she became his woman. And he loved her, and Yitzchak was comforted after his mother's death. Okay, now again, another important part in this situation, because what you see here is you see this extended courtship meeting the standards of courtship. And so the agent of the man finds the woman, he stakes out his claim with, you might call them engagement gifts, but they're engagement gifts which are valuable, beautiful, but they're also representative of this servitude that's going to be inside the relationship. Then he goes to the father and goes to the brother and gives the qualifications of the husband-to-be. And the father and the brother agree. Then the mother agrees. Then they ask the daughter, do you also agree? And she does agree. And when she does agree, then there is a dowry established for her. And in this case, the dowry came from Yitzchak, so that she would have a dowry. And this, we'll go into this part of intestacy later on. But the point is that she has this dowry. What you don't see, what you do not see. Here's the entirety of the marital ceremony. And Yitzchak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rivkah, and she became his woman. And he loved her, and Yitzchak was comforted after his mother's death. There's no chuppah, there's no stepping on the glass, there's no screaming mazel tov, there's no, doing 7 circles, there's no oaths, there's no bridesmaids, there's no groomsmen. There's, no flower girl. There's none of this stuff. None of that stuff appears in Scripture at all. And in fact, she's not even called a wife. She's called Isha, his woman. And in fact, the word wife really doesn't even appear in either the Hebrew or the Greek. It's inferred, but it doesn't really appear. So this chapter 24 is a very great model for mothers, if you have sons, and you're concerned about how they're going to get into a relationship with someone else, an adult relationship with their future wife. This is the model to teach, and this is the model to use that is going to yield a very strong and positive, blessed, biblical result. Okay, all right. Thank you today for joining me on Cepher Commentaries in our discussion of only Genesis chapter 24.